Hello and welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every single week. Today, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Lauren. I am the founder of Roar Philanthropy.
From what I can see, it's pretty new, right? Like it's a newer organization.
Yeah, it is brand new. So I'm very much like Leslie Knope, where when I want my park, I want it right now. I don't want to do all the formal things that you have to do.
Yeah.
And so I had the idea. It started in March. I attended a Make-A-Wish parade for a Make-A-Wish kid with my mom. And so we were sitting in the parking lot, and as everyone was lining up with the fire trucks and the police cars, I started thinking, how could I used my PR skills to enhance this wish even more for this wish kid? I'm part of the young professionals group called the Young Wish Makers of Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And so we do a lot with Make-A-Wish. And so kind of learning the behind the scenes and what wish coordinators do, I was like, okay, so, this wish was for a camper. I could have reached out to some people and been like, hey, there's a wish kid, receiving their camper. Do you want to donate some outdoor clothing or, cute little camping mugs and stuff, just to kind of help the wish coordinator out.
Sure.
And so that idea was originally, okay, I'm going to be an event firm for nonprofits. I'm going to open up my own event firm, and PR firm. And then the more I thought about it, I'm only 2 years out of school, so I don't really have that much, credibility behind me in the PR world yet. And a lot of nonprofits do their own events in-house. So I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. And so then in June, I went in for some tests. And so I originally went in for some cervical cancer blood screens. And then they ran those tests, and I had some weird levels come back that indicated that my kidney was decreasing in function. And so why that was so eye-opening was I only have one kidney. And so that one decreasing, it was like, okay, we don't know what this means. Yeah. It's COVID. This is also making you incredibly susceptible to it. Mm-hmm. You need to go back into a strict quarantine. So it was just like that it was like, okay, family's cut off, friends are cut off, all the volunteer opportunities I had planned, I had to email them and say, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
And with all the hardship that came with that quarantine, I think cutting off the volunteering was the hardest part for me. It's such a huge part of who I am. And so that's kind of when the Roar Philanthropy idea came to life, when I was like, okay, if I can't do these volunteer opportunities, somebody else has to. Like, somebody has to fill these roles. How do I find people to do that? How do I share this passion for volunteering with others? And that's when I decided, like, okay, I could, find people to do this. Like, I have friends, I have networks, I can reach out to them and find them. And so in June, around Father's Day, I had made a post on Facebook about Make-A-Wish needing cards made for wish kids who are waiting for their wishes. Mm-hmm. And I had an incredible amount of people respond and message me saying, hey, put me down for 2 cards. I want to make some. And that's kind of when this idea hit, when it was like, okay, people want to volunteer. They just don't know how to get there yet. And these are all things that I could solve. And so when I was doing my market research, people don't volunteer because they don't know how to get in touch with someone. They don't know about the opportunities. The volunteer onboarding process takes too long. They don't know where to start. And so that's when I was like, yep, we're going to do this. And so instead of, taking time to digest that thought and think about it, I was like, nope, we're doing it now. So I applied for my business license, got that, made a Facebook page, made an Instagram, and then told the world I was up and running. So
off to the races
very
right
new.
Away.
Yeah. So it's very new. A lot of people I've been chatting with, they're like, yeah, it took, a year or two from idea to launch. And I was like, yeah, it took me about 2 months.
2 months of strict quarantine.
Exactly. And that's, it was nice to have something to do with my free time after I was able to clock out from my 8 to 5. Be like, okay, now I can work on something that's actually helping others. I mean, of course, I still nap and do a nice Netflix binge every once in a while, but this has been something to kind of keep me busy and out of trouble all by myself.
Yeah. Because I mean, it is a thing for sure, because my fiance likes to volunteer too and do things, but you just can't know all the organizations that need volunteers or even like are out there, I search for stuff sometimes that, I'm interested in, but I mean, it's limited to my own knowledge in Google's, I guess. So it's definitely a necessary and helpful thing for sure. But how does how did that, I know you talked about like you had your friends in a network to start doing volunteer work, but like the idea of just having sort of charities and organizations that you can match people with, was there something that you saw before or anything that led you to sort of that road?
Kind of. I mean, the whole matchmaking portion came from me being annoyed on Bumble. You know, I was spending so much time swiping.
Yeah.
I was like, what would be a better use of my time? And I was like, oh, matching people to volunteer opportunities, like taking the same concept of like, what are people looking for, and matching them with like an organization that they can go help out, they can make a difference. And that's kind of where the matchmaking element of this came from. And then just knowing that people are more likely to be involved if they care about the organization, if they're able to commit to it. And all of those factors go into the volunteer match program survey, where it's like broken down into 3 sections. I ask about, you know, what interests do you have? What categories of nonprofits are you looking to get into, like environment, childhood education, domestic violence, childhood cancer, adult cancer. You know, there's like hundreds of categories that I didn't even know existed.
Right.
And like you said, the 3 organizations that I was going to start volunteering with this summer, I didn't know about them until someone else connected me with them earlier this year.
Right.
And I took a lot of pride in knowing a lot of, you know, the volunteer network here in Milwaukee from Make-A-Wish and other volunteer opportunities I've been involved in. And it's like, okay, if I, you know, as someone who volunteers as a personality trait, if I didn't know about these things, other people clearly don't know about them either.
Is it going to get to the point sort of the frame of reference I have? I don't know if you know the website, but it's called Trade. It's for coffee. But basically it's sort of a similar thing, but with coffee, where you like put in all this different stuff that you like or don't like, and then they match you with like different coffees that you would like. So is it going to be sort of like that where, and I don't know if this is the case yet, but where you can go to like the website or something and like put in all this stuff, and then there'll be like charities that you match with or something like that?
Yeah. So right now it's just a Google survey. So I have to do a lot of the back end of it myself. Hopefully one day a technology company will want to sponsor me and get involved and make an app for me. Yeah. But right now it's just a Google survey. And so when people answer the questions, you know, what are your interests? What's your lifestyle? What do you like to do in your free time? What's your time availability? How much time do you want to commit? I take that information and I make a do-gooder profile. And so then I have that on file, and I work directly with the organizations, and I have a main person that I work with there to assess their needs. And, you know, say someone wants to get involved in an animal rescue, but the Humane Society didn't work out because they don't have the 6 months to commit to the same day, same hour every week. Well, there are a lot of other animal rescues that would love to have you, you know, once a week or, you know, once a month, or whatever fits into your schedule. So then reaching out and telling them, hey, I have these 3 rescues that match, you know, the breed of dog or breed of cat, because they get very, very specific. That matches what you're looking for, whether it be, you know, an in-person volunteer opportunity, or you just want to clean out, you know, a closet and donate some clothes to like a rescue mission, or you do want to volunteer and build a house for Habitat for Humanity, letting you know that those opportunities are there, and then sending you kind of like an email recap each week, bi-weekly, as things come up, letting you know, hey, these things interested you. This is what I have available. Let me know if you want me to connect you.
Wow, that's a lot of work for you. That's like a lot of things. That's a lot of things to do.
Yeah, but it's fulfilling and it's fun. And when I was, you know, creating this over the last 2 months, I could have just went to Google, copied and pasted all of the nonprofits in these categories, put them on the website, and then
you find them, you go get them.
You go do it. Yeah. But building these relationships is kind of like the core part of Roar Philanthropy, and getting to know the organizations on a much deeper level, their needs. So that way I can send volunteers that will fulfill those needs, and the volunteers know that they're going to an experience that will also change their life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's great. It's a super awesome resource to have, because I think it's just lacking in Milwaukee, but I think I haven't heard of this anywhere. So I think it's lacking in a lot of places.
There's a website. Wisconsin does have a website, but again, it's just a website that lists all of the all the orgs. So it's kind of up to you. And so I know that as humans, we just want to do the least amount of work. So as someone who doesn't mind doing all the work for someone, I was like, okay, as long as you go out and do something good for someone else, I'll do all the hard work for you. You just have to go do it.
And like scrolling through all those organizations is just, it has to be so difficult, because sometimes even there's organizations where their names aren't necessarily correlated with what they do. So you're like scrolling, oh, I don't even know what they do. Like,
it's so confusing. Or trying to find a person, and once you find an email, getting an email response back. A lot of these organizations, they don't put out front that you have to, go through training. You have to do like a 3-month training course, or and some of it's very necessary, like when you're working with kids or animals, like that training, that background is important. But, a lot of people don't have time to do that. And if that's the first one they click on,
like, this is way too much.
Then they're like, this is too much. I don't want anything to do with this. They exit out and the thought leaves their brain and they don't, come back to it.
Yeah, it's like dating a super high maintenance person and then just like being like, I'm not dating anymore.
Exactly.
This is too much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But you mentioned your kidney. Is that better now, or is that still a thing?
It's an ongoing process. Later in the fall, I'll probably have to go in for a kidney biopsy just to make sure everything's kind of checked out. So when I was 6, I was diagnosed with Wilms tumor, which is a cancer of the kidney. Throughout the years, we've gone in for checkups. Everything's been fine. Got the green light, thumbs up. You're great. And that's why this year was so jarring to hear like something's wrong. We don't know what, because it was the first time in 20 years that it wasn't just a regular doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
And so my doctor kind of compared it like saying, okay, so normally when you get your kidney taken out, you're in your late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And you've lived your entire life with 2, so you're fine with just the one for the rest of your life. Well, I have been without one for 20 years, and my one has been doing the work of 2 for 20 years, and I still have X amount of years to go. And so that's kind of the scary part of being like, okay, so I have the kidney of basically a 50-year-old at 26.
Yeah.
And we have to figure this out. So I'm good now. But answers will be nice. And the whole health insurance thing has also played a part into this too. I recently just turned 26.
Oh,
and so it was
over.
Yeah. So switching over, I do have a really good employer who has health insurance, but it was on me. I didn't fill out the paperwork fast enough. And so I like skipped, and with health insurance, it's like a bi-yearly sign up.
Yeah, it's a nightmare is what it is.
So I have to wait. So all of these procedures and stuff will just have to wait until I get covered in the marketplace. I tried that and Badger Care, but
wouldn't it be awesome if we just had universal health care? Wouldn't that be a great thing?
Oh my gosh, I know. I was reading all of these tweets of like people from other countries who have it, and they, talk to Americans who are abroad. And when Americans, freak out about having to go into the hospital, they're just like, why are you worrying? We have free healthcare. You just have to go.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be so nice to just walk in and be like,
what a dream. Yeah.
I know. Isn't that sad as an adult that that's like our dream?
Well, I think it's more annoying to me because there's other countries where it's working great and we just can't get it here. So it's like it's a within grasp. Like we can see it happening, but we can't get it.
I know. And the pre-existing condition thing, that is a whole nother ball game. And
yeah, it's terrible. I think, especially now, like with everyone, even me personally, like I got laid off at the not the beginning, at the middle of this pandemic, that we're still going through. And so you lose your health insurance.
Yeah.
And then you have to do sort of what you had to do, which is like just scramble and try to find something. And all the other options are terrible. It's
They're
like
awful.
if you don't get health insurance through your employer and your employer doesn't have good health insurance, it sucks. Like all the other options are either crazy expensive. Like they gave me the option, which we're going on a tangent here, which is laughable. Because, you can do COBRA and like extend your coverage if you get laid off. And so I called them up and they're like, yeah, it'll be $700 a month to continue your coverage. I'm like, okay.
That's basic care. Right. Yeah. I have to see a nephrologist and an oncologist and a gynecologist. And that's like $900, $800. And that's just for like the first consultation.
I know.
I'll never forget my first encounter with healthcare. We went to a nephrologist. So after you turn a certain age, unfortunately, you can't see your pediatric oncologist anymore, which kind of sucks because, you go your whole life dealing with all these problems with them. And
Yeah.
then once we turned, I think it was 20 or 21, they were like, okay, you're not a child anymore. Unfortunately, you can't come back to the room that's decorated in cows and kites and Winnie the Pooh, and you have to
Right.
go to a real adult doctor.
Sterile room, like
Exactly.
just white walls. Yeah.
Just white walls. They don't know who you are.
Right.
And so we went, and a nephrologist is a kidney doctor. And so we went to the first consultation with one. This was about 4 years ago. We met, nurse took temperature, did all that. The doctor came in, he felt around my stomach, told me to eat more spinach, less salt. And that was our first meeting. And then my mom showed me the bill, and it was $900 for that hour.
My mom, you could have done this for me.
And I was like, what happened? What? This is what I have to look forward to? Nothing happened. I was told what you have been telling me for the last 20 years, eat more spinach, no more salt, less McDonald's. Why did we just pay for, and thankfully insurance covered part of that, but without it,
part of it covered the spinach, not the salt part.
Exactly. Salt's extra.
Yeah. But is that a thing based on having just one kidney now? Is that is salt just makes it harder for it to function or something like that?
Yeah, so I am trying to learn all of the interesting kidney things protein. I've had to cut basically meat out of my diet because the proteins in meat, I'm not a scientist, somehow are really hard on your kidney. And so there's a lot of different proteins and salt. I have to stay away from sulfur rich foods. It's all very, I know it's very strange. So I'm basically just eating zucchini and pasta sauce, but
the staples,
Yeah, mushroom. I mix saute up some mushrooms and zucchini, some olive oil, and call it a day. But yeah, so the salt, I haven't been able to get my McDonald's fries, which kind of stinks. But and no more alcohol. That was a big thing too. No, they're if you want to live past 35, you should probably cut out alcohol, cold turkey, and coffee. I am supposed to only have about 1 cup of coffee a month. I don't know how to function anymore.
I mean, those are two things. I don't drink that often anyways, but so I run marathons, and while I'm training for my marathons, I don't drink at all. And at first it's very weird. And then it becomes just oh, well, whatever. I don't really care. It's sort of I cut out soda too a really long time ago. It's sort of like that, where you just sort of forget. At least I do. Just sort of forget about it. Yeah.
There's some days where, it's kind of helps having the pandemic happen because, I haven't been able to go out.
Sure.
And that's kind of eased the whole awkwardness of, oh, do you want to drink? Oh, no, I'm good. And, in Wisconsin, everyone has to ask why you're not drinking.
Right.
What would you like, the long answer or the short answer? Which answer will make you stop asking?
Yeah, right.
That's the one you're going to get. So that's kind of helped. But yeah, there are some days after work where I'm like, wow, lakefront IPA just sounds real good. Or,
No, yeah, I know what you mean. And it is hard because every event in Wisconsin seems to be associated with drinking. It's such an unhealthy environment.
It's terrible. It's awful.
Yeah. And so, yeah, if you go anywhere, it's oh no, this is a drinking event. It's oh, well, so do I have to drink to come? Could I just come?
You just have a water with a lime.
Yeah, is that fine?
I have a vodka soda.
Yeah. So it is odd. It's an odd culture here, and
it is.
And that's from someone who grew up in Wisconsin. I just think it's weird when people start looking at you weird for doing something healthy. That's the odd thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know my friends, they'll be super, great about it. And they have been amazing support systems through it all. But, it's just, you get out in those group settings at those events and you don't have anything to drink. And people are like, what's wrong with you? Are you, one, pregnant, two, what's going on? I'm like, no, none of the above. I just don't want to drink. So
just trying to live longer is what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Not like you, sir.
Exactly. Right. And people, it's just, and people have some of the weirdest things that, because it is a very hard thing to understand if I do get really transparent with someone, if, they're asking all the wrong questions and I'm like, actually, I will die. So if you could stop, that would be great. And then they're just like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to die young too. Then I'm like, oh, that's not what you say, but thank you, sir.
Yeah, no, it is interesting though. That's a whole thing. But because basically you're poisoning yourself every time you drink. That's basically what you're doing. Just in a delicious way.
Yes. And, it's fun. And, I was thinking, I was like, okay, the next time we go out, we go out to like a dancing bar.
Mhm.
Am I going to be that lame friend that like can't have fun without drinking? And I'm like, no, I'm like still the fun one.
Right.
So I'll just go home earlier and wake up more refreshed. So
no, that's a super nice thing about not drinking is like you never, I'm 29. I had to think about that. And
the pandemic, it's like, has it been 50
how old
years?
am I? Yeah, how old am I now? And I get like 2-day hangovers sometimes from not drinking that much. And it's so nice not to drink and feel nice every day and wake up and just feel okay.
Yeah, the last time I drank was my 26th birthday. I had a Schitt's Creek themed Zoom party.
Nice.
And so it was pretty great. One of my best friends, she came as Moira, like full wig, full outfit. She even downloaded the Rosebud Hotel Zoom background.
Wow.
She came prepared. And so I was expecting it to be like an hour long, have like a drink or two. Mm-hmm. And it ended up lasting until 1 a.m.
Wow.
And so in that time, I went through one of those pre-mixed margarita bottles, like the whole thing.
Wow.
And I was out for 4 days.
Yeah. I mean, it'll get you.
Yeah. So now it's good to have an excuse. Like, can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I feel like as I get older, I'm like I don't want to do that anymore. No. Like I want to be functional on a daily basis, especially like when you even get older and like if it happens and there's kids involved. It's like, can you imagine dealing with a kid while you're hungover?
My cat's the worst. Like I can't imagine.
But we should get back to the matter head.
I'm good at digressing. That's one of my many talents.
Yeah, no, for sure. Me too. I could talk for hours about stuff. But you sort of talked about this a little bit, but you're a childhood cancer survivor. That's sort of because you had a Make-A-Wish, did you, right, as well?
I did, yeah. So my Make-A-Wish was to New York City. It's kind of a nerdy story. I've been a dork forever, so just kind of proves that. So it wasn't to go to New York to go shopping or like to see the Statue of Liberty. I wanted to go to New York to see the statue of Balto, who is the sled dog that saved the children of Nome, Alaska. And there's like a cartoon movie on it. I'm pretty sure Kevin Bacon is the voice of Balto. So there's nice. It's a pretty big cast animated movie. Yeah. So we went to New York City and we walked through Central Park until we found the bronze statue of a dog. Wow. So that was my Make-A-Wish.
Wow. So no athletes, no celebrities, no Disneyland trip. Just going to see a dog.
Not even a real one.
A dog statue. Yeah.
Yeah. My sister's wish. So my sister, we had the same cancer 6 months apart. Yeah. So she was diagnosed with Wilms tumor in the summer of 2000. And I was diagnosed in December of 2000. The week before Christmas was when I went in. And yeah, so she had a wish. Her wish was to meet Minnie Mouse. She's kind of like the sound one of the two of us. So her wish was to like go to meet Minnie Mouse, go to Disney. And so my family, we went down to Florida. We stayed at this magical storybook world that's just for kids on their wish trips called Give Kids the World. There's like giant mushroom castles and like fairy tale figures that are walking around all the time. It's a pretty cool place to look up. It looks like, you opened up a children's book and everything just blew up and came to life. So we both were Make-A-Wish recipients, and that kind of changed the course of my life for sure.
What is like statistically the odds of that happening? Is it a genetic thing or is it like?
It's pretty low.
I was like going to say that's really insane.
Yeah, so we've been a part of the National Wilms Tumor Study for years, and I'm pretty sure the only answer or theory that they've been able to give my parents is that it was something in the drinking water that affected like the same cell, because we're sisters and we share close DNA, that it somehow affected it, but nothing conclusive. And actually, my older cousin, he's about 10 years older than I am, so I think he's about 36 now. Mm-hmm. He actually had the same cancer when he was an infant. So about 11 years before I came into the picture, he had it as well. And it's not a genetic disease. It's not linked to any, mom or dad's side. So it's just pretty crazy.
So odd. Like I saw some of the pictures that you posted from when you were going through like radiation and was it radiation chemo? Is that what you went through?
I did a few stints of radiation and chemo. And then the one that I have on my Instagram is after surgery. So I was in the hospital. I think I was about ready to go home at that point.
But yeah, those pictures like almost make me cry. Like it's just
sorry.
No, it's not your fault. Like I'm just saying, like when you see, especially like younger kids like that, and they're going through stuff. Because how old were you when that was happening? 12
6
or 6? Oh, okay. You don't really know what's going on like fully, and it's like scary, and all this stuff is happening to you, and it's just like. It sucks. And I'm sure, I mean, it sucks for you for sure. Like you're going through it, but yeah, I hate seeing kids and things like that, like go through that. I mean, it's terrible if anybody does, but like for something about kids, it's just like,
they don't deserve it. They don't deserve it. And it's still hard. You know, I work really closely with Make-A-Wish on their young professionals group, and with Make-A-Wish in general. I do a lot of work with the team, and then with Roar, and you know, kind of all these feelings resurfacing. It's a lot to process and handle, and you know, kids, they don't deserve that. They, you know,
and most of the time they're so positive, you know, and they're so optimistic about stuff, and I'm like, God damn it, like this should not be happening to you. Like, it sucks.
Yeah, and I remember a lot of stuff. So I remember, you know, going to the doctor. Mm-hmm. So my family and my doctors actually thought I had a brain tumor with how I was acting. I would randomly vomit. I would sleepwalk. I would have intense headaches. And so they thought it was a brain tumor. Mm-hmm. So they ran all these tests because they were like, there's no way it's the same thing that Sarah just had. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like that can't be. So they ran some tests. I think that was in October. And then also Wilms tumor is incredibly rare to have after the age of 3. It's, you know, infant to 3 is usually the age that if you're going to get it, you get it. And so I was 6. So they were like, there's no way that this is happening to you too. So they ran, you know, all these other tests, nothing came back. And then it wasn't until December that I believe it was my pediatrician who said, you know, let's run one more test. Ran it, came back, was rushed up to UW Children's Hospital. And I remember the phone call that my dad made because he was up at work at the time. So he called before we went up and he was like, I love you. You know, you're strong. I remember my grandparents coming to visit me. I actually remember being really upset because my mom was telling me to pack. And I was like, no, grandma's buying me a bag. She's buying me an overnight bag because that's what she bought Sarah. So she's buying me an overnight bag. And so my mom's like, you know, crazy because she just found out, you know, I have cancer too. So she's like, just pack your bag. And I'm refusing to put my clothes in a bag. So I'm like, no, grandma and grandpa are going to be here with my bag soon. And instead, grandma and grandpa showed up with a big, giant stuffed animal dog. Okay. And so then we had to find a bag to put all my stuff in. But yeah, so it's like little stuff like that I remember. And I remember arriving to the hospital. So when I got there, they had to flush my system to go, you know, into surgery to see what was going on. And so normally, if you're not a stubborn child like I was, you just sip a little sippy cup full of this juice stuff and it clears you out. Yeah. Well, I refused. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. So my mom was like, no, you have to do this. And I'm just like, no, this is gross. I'm not doing it. And so because I didn't do that, they had to hold me down on the table. Like, I think it was like 5 nurses and a doctor had to come restrain me so they could put a tube down my nose so it would get into my system.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, you know, all these little things that you remember. And it's really hard to know that, you know, all these kids who are going through it now will probably remember. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully, you know, all of their memories are good and they can, you know, look past it, or they're young enough where, you know, they're not stored in their brain yet, or, you know, their dreams to them. But yeah, it's hard to know that these little kids go through so much.
So how has that stuff affected you as an adult? Like even just, I mean, you talk about the physical stuff of like having one kidney and stuff like that, but even from a mental standpoint too, how do you feel now not looking back? Cause I mean, there's still issues now, but, how's it affected you?
But yeah, it's been hard, especially recently. I've been in some dark dark places, and a lot of survivor's guilt, especially working so closely with Make-A-Wish now. I love it and I wouldn't change anything about it. But there was a wish that we had shared with one of the committees that we were working on for an event. And the little girl whose wish it was, I was later told she passed away that day. And so it's just kind of this like, well, why did I get to survive? And this sweet little girl didn't. Like, why am I getting to live, my life? And just knowing that, there are wish kids out there who won't survive, to get their initial wish, their travel wishes. And so they're having to flex and make, changes. And so survivor's guilt definitely is a big thing. And that's kind of where like Roar started, where it's like, how do I take these feelings of, sadness and grief and pain, and what can I do to like help others, with the time that I have? Because clearly I'm here for a reason. So I feel like I have to make the most of that and impact, especially Make-A-Wish. That one clearly is the organization that started it all for me and has a big spot in my heart. And it's like, how do I give back to these kids who are just like me? And then also like my family, we didn't really grow up talking about it. It's kind of something that, wasn't really part of my identity until I moved to Milwaukee and got involved with Make-A-Wish and kind of, dove into like, okay, like this is part of me. I can either embrace it and let it guide me places, or I can sweep it back under the rug and not do anything with it. And so that's kind of been a major turning point too, where it's like, okay, this is part of me. This happened to me. Let's do something with it.
Yeah, no, do you think it's because it was just really obviously hard probably for your parents to see two of their kids go through? They just didn't want to relive that and talk about it?
I think so. I mean, I can't imagine. My mom had also just had my brother. So my brother was, I think, 6 months old when my sister was going through it. Yeah. So I have been able to have conversations with my mom recently about it. And, what was it like for her? And, what did she go through? Because I just saw her as mom. You know,
sure.
You don't really see your parents as people until it's, till it's too late in life. But
no, for sure.
And so, having these conversations and being like, okay, so you're not a machine. So how did you deal? How did you do this? How did you do this? Like, I'm inconvenienced when there's a spider on my ceiling in the world. Like, that's when the world's ending for me. So how did you do this? And so I think that played a lot into it too. But talking to her more now, I think has been a good healing process. And knowing that we can talk about it now openly, freely, has been good for all of us.
From that point, so you went to UWM, right?
I did, yes. Proud Panther.
Yeah. And so you talked about not having much experience in this field. When you were in college, did you figure out what you wanted to do? Did you know what you wanted to do? Or were you just like, I don't know?
The college story. Okay, so I originally started at Whitewater. And I'm a first generation college student.
Nice.
Thank you. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I followed a boy. So of course I didn't, have my own plan. So I just went. I thought college would be like high school where you just go and you do your classes and someone else tells you what to do.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case. And so Whitewater just wasn't a good fit for me. I took about a year off, went to UW Rock County, got some credits under my belt. And then it was actually my sister's high school graduation where I was living at home. I had finished all that I could at URock. Like, I went and met with my counselor. I'm like, okay, great. What's up for next semester? And she's like, there's nothing else for you to do. You've done it all. And I'm like, but wait, what does that mean? And so that happened. And then my sister's graduation happened and I was sitting up in the bleachers. And I'm like, okay, this was me 3 years ago. What do I want to do with my life? And so that morning I applied to UW Milwaukee. I gave them a very, very honest essay of why Whitewater didn't work out, why I want to better my life, and came to UW Milwaukee in 2016. And honestly, Milwaukee feels more like home to me now than any other place in the world. It's where I found myself, where I found my calling. I changed my major 7 times when I was at Whitewater. In the year and a half I was there, it changed 7 times. So I was very lost as an individual. I didn't know what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do right out of high school was to be a journalist. Back in 2010, journalism's dying. You don't want to be a journalist. So I was like, oh, fine, I'll go into business. So full circle, graduated with a journalism, advertising, and media studies degree from UW Milwaukee. I was involved in her campus. So I was the event coordinator for the online magazine that we had on campus. I wrote for the UWM Post, and then also coordinated a few Make-A-Wish fundraisers in between there. And that's when I found my calling of like, okay, events, journalism, connecting people, nonprofits. After college, I joined PetFest. From PetFest, I was the assistant producer of that for 2 years. And now I am the events, public relations, social media experience coordinator at Schlitz Park.
I used to work in Schlitz Park, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Small Walkie does it again.
Where do you see Roar going? Like, where do you want it to go in the next, year, short term, and in the long term?
Yeah, short term, I just really want to start placing volunteers. I think that's the part that's going to take the longest. Doing these do-gooder profiles, really honing in the matching process. So once that starts, the survey goes live next week. I got a little ambitious with all of my things that I wanted to do, and I thought doing them at once was the answer. So
that's how I am too. Yeah.
I'm like, yes, let's do this collaboration and this one and this one. And it's like, no, you actually have to get like your core business done first. Yeah. Like, what are you doing, Lauren? And so that comes out next week. And so once that starts to roll out, people start to take it. I start getting feedback from volunteers on like their, the experience they had while taking it. And then also working with the organizations and being like, okay, great. I have 5 people who took my survey. Here's what, they are interested in. Do you have any opportunities that I could send their way? And so kind of figuring out that process and being like, okay, is Google survey or Google form, whatever the little purple icon is called, the right way to do it? Or should I look into using a different platform? Is this, working? So I really just want to hone in on that for the next year. Grow that audience. I would love to get into some small businesses and student orgs and have them take it as well for some, bigger group testing and figuring out, okay, how do I get groups of people involved? And long term, I would love to make this full time. I would love to start selling some, ad space, getting some event sponsors, stuff like that. And just making my life all about impacting others.
No, yeah. I'm not going to, I don't want to tell you how to do anything or anything, but from my experience personally, so I think high schools would be a great thing to tap into with what you're talking about specifically, because I was in National Honor Society and you have to do like, I don't know if did they have it in Madison too? I think it's a national thing.
Yeah. We had, I think it was, National Honor Society. And we also had Key Club.
Okay. Yeah. So
because our school had like 400 people in it.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So we had to do like volunteer stuff, a certain amount of hours of volunteer work every year, as well as like maintain a certain GPA and stuff like that. But it would have been sweet in high school if I could have done something like this, where I could be like, oh, I like this stuff, because basically you're in high school, then you're just, okay, well, whatever comes up, I guess is what I have to do.
Whatever mom sends me, whatever, I was involved in like our youth group, and it was the same thing. It's like, okay, we're going to go to the food pantry. I love that high school idea. I'm actually going to write that down if you don't mind. Really.
No, yeah. But yeah, because I would have loved to have that resource, because then I got to go to the nursing home again, Mom. I want to do something else. I mean, I like old people are fine, but I want to mix it up.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I want to instill in people too, is that just like habit, that culture, that love of it. And so, in high school, you have to go do these things and it's a chore.
Yeah,
it's
right.
An absolute chore. You don't want to do it. Like, even though you're doing something good, it's like, oh, yuck, can't wait for this to be over.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not what volunteering is about. It's, you should enjoy it. It doesn't have to be a chore. It doesn't have to be something you dread looking at. It should be something that you're like, yes, I get to go do this. I know I'm going to see this person. I know I'm going to, get to work with this dog, or, I'm going to get to impact this kid. That's what it's about. No, I love that idea. I didn't even think about high schools. So thank you.
No, yeah. I just like, because I was just thinking about it, and I'm like, yeah, I wish I had this, I wish I had this resource.
The youth of the future.
Yeah. And then if you can get them early, they might change their mind completely about how they view volunteering, so.
And I wish I had programs like this too,
Yeah.
It changed so much of like your worldly perspective. I feel like in high school, especially, I was talking to my mom a little bit about this, how when you're 18, you have to decide your entire life, like whether you go for a degree, or you go for trades, or you just take a year off, or you
go into the military or something.
You go into the military, and it's like, what in your high school, your like sheltered high school life prepared you to make those decisions? Like
right.
you didn't have anything to base them off of. So going back to your point of like, if you were exposed to some different things, you know, besides just going to the nursing home or going, you know, we stocked the food pantry, but also we didn't really like fully understand why we had a food pantry.
That's another thing. Yeah. Or like what you're doing or like how is it important?
Yeah. You know, we'd go there and it would just be like, all right, put these cans on the shelf. And it's like, okay, cool. I put my cans on the shelf. Can I go home now?
Right.
And it's like, no, that's actually going to like feed someone. Like we actually have homeless people in Milton that go, or, you know, low income families that go to this food pantry and you're impacting their lives. It's not just you salty teenager, like going here and
rolling your eyes and
rolling your eyes. Yeah. This is big for you. And I think having more kids understand like it's bigger than them and their feelings and their emotions right in that moment, and letting them know, hey, you can make a difference if you care about it.
Yeah. I think it definitely, for sure, in high school, I mean, and in college too, you're a little bit older in college, but in high school it was like, you don't get to see the impact, which is unfortunate because I feel like that would help too. Like even it was like 2 days ago, I was running down the street and they were doing a hunger task force was in Bayview, handing out like food to low income families. And there was a huge line of cars like down the entire street. And there are these people just working, handing out food. And I'm like, I wish I could have seen this when I was younger, because this is actually affecting people and people need this, you know? But I was just like, oh, I got to put all these jars up on this shelf. And then you don't get to see what you're doing. What I really like about this is that sort of as I grew older, it's like, you can't change everything. You know what I mean? You only have a limited amount of time.
Unfortunately, I'm learning that lesson.
Yeah. You only have a limited amount of time and in each day and even in your life, I guess. And you can't impact every single person that exists or every organization even. But what you can do is find something that you really like to do and really want to give back to. And the good thing about the world is that there's millions of people with different interests and different skill sets. So if we all can just like something and do something and give back a little bit to something, not everything, our world will be just a better place in general.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I'm hoping Roar does. So our core values are respect, optimism, acceptance, and reliability. But I wish there was an E in the word Roar. That's where our little acronym came from, but there's no E. So the big one I preach is empathy. And everybody just had a little bit more empathy, goes along with their interests. If you're interested and you care and you have empathy, like you said, you can change one person's life. That person will change another person's life. And it'll just be this domino effect through millions of people. And if we all just did that at least once a day or once a week even, the world would be so different.
Yeah. And it is those little things, it's like, even if you have a little bit of time, giving your time to something that's important is important. And so, yeah, it's a great organization, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And yeah, I think it's a really great idea. So
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for doing it.
Like I said, it all happened Leslie Knope style. So I'm sure it'll be evolving. But that core matching program will definitely be what it focuses on, and getting people to where they, want to go, and like where they want to make a difference. Because like you said, you can't change everything. You can't change everyone. But if you focus in on, what you do care about and what moves you, you'll hopefully inspire someone else to do the same thing too.
Yeah. And it takes away that first initial like roadblock, basically, that most people have. It's like taking that first step is like the hardest thing to do, because you feel like overwhelmed and uneducated a lot. I'm talking about myself, but I'm sure a lot of people too, of everything that's out there and what even you can do. And so it takes away all of that and basically is like, here's what you can do. Here's some of the things you can do. Go for it.
Exactly. And now we've been alone for so long now. I even find myself being antisocial. Like I went to a book club 2 weeks ago, social distance book club. And it was with people who weren't my family or like work. Yeah. And I didn't know how to talk. I was like, we're joking around, and I'm like, yeah.
Good one. I think that's what I say, right? Good.
Yeah. And then I walked away and I'm like, what did I just say? And so, in a world where that's happening now, making that first connection can feel so hard. And reaching out and being like, oh no, another new person I have to get to know. And it's like, okay, if you know me and I know them, I'd love to introduce you. That way it's not as scary. Right. And meeting someone new doesn't have to be scary or nerve-wracking. It can be exciting and something you look forward to. And that's also what I'm hoping that people feel when they work with us.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you. And what you're doing is really awesome. And my hope is for this, that it expands everywhere and not just in Wisconsin. And you can help out people in different states and different cities.
That would be the dream. That would be the dream. Are you familiar with Parks and Rec?
Yeah, I watched the series all the way through twice. So
okay. I have a dream, that similar montage idea of spreading around the country.
Yeah,
it's that scene. I think it's the end of season 6 before they agreed to do a season 7, where they fast forward into the future. Okay. And Leslie Knope gets off the elevator and she's handed a briefing, and she's like, okay, well, there's all the maps of all the parks she's in charge of. Oh, sure. Okay, no, call this person and, rearrange this meeting. And it's like, hey, you have a meeting in San Francisco on this day. And so, I'm hoping that's my life, 10 years from now, that we have these little hubs all over the place that are helping people, connecting people with organizations, and that the organizations, I hope one day we won't have a need for these organizations, that one day, we won't have a need for a homeless shelter. We won't have a need for childhood cancer awareness anymore. We won't have a need for, domestic violence shelters. But obviously that probably will never happen. So if we can minimize their need or, help them achieve their goals to fix their communities so they don't need these things anymore, that would be the dream.
Yeah. Well, no, I think what you're doing is really cool and really awesome. And thank you for doing it. And thank you for being so open and vulnerable about not only today, but I've seen the stuff that you post on social media. Cause I think that's super important too, is allowing people to see that, what you're going through or what you went through, you don't solve it in a day, it's an ongoing thing. So I appreciate that too.
Thank you. Yeah. And thanks for following along. Thanks for being interested. It's kind of overwhelming in the best way. It's overwhelming in the best way that people are interested and that, you wanted to chat and do this. And at the same time, it's like, oh my gosh, people think what I'm doing is interested. They're watching. And now I have to really deliver. So it's
you got to deliver those goods now. Yep.
I have to deliver. I can't just, take more naps and call it a day. I have to really, really buckle down and be like, okay, people want what you're saying you're going to give them. So let's do this thing. So thank you for being interested, and thanks for putting up with all my tangents today too.
Oh no,
it's been a great conversation.
No, yeah, it's awesome. I'm that way too, so it's completely fine. But yeah, I think it really shows just the character of you as a person, and you're just what you're willing to do and give to people, and I think that's really great. So thank you. And actually say what is your website and social media channels and things.
So you can find us on roarphilanthropy.org. And any button you click on there will be sent back to my email. I'm still figuring out website and how to work buttons and stuff. So any button you click or any link, it will go back to my email. And then on Instagram, you can find us at Roar Philanthropy, and on Facebook with the same name as well.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much. It was awesome talking to you.
Yes, you too. Thank you, Sam.